Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why you have a hard time getting started on big projects, even when you know you should? This new study dives deep into procrastination. So, procrastination, we all do it. It's that habit of putting things off, especially when they're big, long-term goals. Like finishing a huge project for work, or that endless to-do list. Scientists have tried to figure out why for years, and there are lots of ideas, but no one really big unifying explanation. Until now, maybe these researchers are proposing a new way to think about procrastination. They're not just looking at if you procrastinate, but how and when you work over time. Think of it like this. Imagine you have a big assignment. One person might chip away at it steadily. Another might wait a bit, then ramp up, and a third might leave almost all of it for the very last minute. This study says how you spread your work out over time, or not, is key to understanding procrastination. They developed a mathematical model, like a really smart computer program, to figure this out. It looks at a person's decisions day by day. Each day, you decide, should I work now or should I put it off? This model says procrastination happens naturally when you're trying to get the most reward while using the least amount of effort. It's like your brain is doing a cost-benefit analysis all the time. What's really new here is they're looking at two things that other theories kind of missed. The first is perfectionism. You might think perfectionists would get things done perfectly without delay, but the study says it's more complicated. Whether perfectionism makes you procrastinate more or less actually depends on other things, like how much you value immediate rewards versus future ones. They even did a study to test this and found evidence that their model of perfectionism matches how people really feel about completing tasks. The second new idea is about how our effort feels. Sometimes putting in a little effort feels okay, but a lot of effort feels really draining. Think of it like a curve. The cost of effort, does the cost go up a little bit with each extra bit of work, or does it suddenly jump up when you push yourself harder? This shape of effort cost can explain why procrastination can lead to total exhaustion. When you push yourself really hard at the last minute, the effort cost can be huge. This model also lines up with other things we already know about procrastination. It explains why having less time makes procrastination worse, why really unpleasant tasks lead to more delay, and why more tempting distractions make it harder to start. And it even hints at why rewards, especially quick rewards, can help us fight procrastination. To test their ideas, they looked at different scenarios. The first was a simple delayed reward scenario. You work on a task and the reward only comes after you finish, and maybe even after the deadline. Unsurprisingly, this is where they saw the most procrastination. Their model works by looking at decisions made each day. If you work, you make progress, but you pay an effort cost. If you don't work, you don't make progress and don't pay a cost, but you get immediate enjoyment from doing something else. The model uses something called dynamic programming, which is a fancy way of saying it figures out the best plan by looking forward from the deadline. They define procrastination as the number of days you delay starting or continuing work. So, more days of delay means more procrastination. And that effort cost they mentioned, they modeled it as a power law. This just means the cost of working can be linear, where each bit of work costs the same. Or it could be convex, where working harder gets much more expensive, or concave, where the first bits of work are the hardest. The reward, they said, also follows a power law. Think of it like this. For some tasks, getting to 90% done might feel almost as good as 100%. For others, that last 10% is everything. And if you don't achieve it, you feel like you got nothing. That's where their perfectionism, parameter theta, comes in. A high theta means you really need to finish almost everything to feel good about it. They even tested this idea about perfectionism. They asked people how satisfied they'd be with different levels of task completion. They found that people's self-reported satisfaction often followed this power law pattern, and the exponent, that theta value, was actually higher for people who reported being more perfectionistic. This is neat because it supports their idea that how much you care about finishing perfectly is part of the mathematical model. With this model, they simulated different scenarios and found three main ways procrastination shows up. First, a general delay before you ramp up your effort. Second, leaving it all for the very last minute. And third, not working at all. These all depend on the settings of their model, like how much you discount the future, how costly effort is, and how much you care about perfection. They found that if the reward is small, the task is really unpleasant, high cost, or there are lots of fun alternatives, you're more likely to procrastinate. Makes sense, right? And temporal discounting, which is how much you devalue future rewards, is a big player. If you really don't care about the future, you'll likely procrastinate more. It's like saying, why bother now when I can deal with it later? This is consistent with real-world studies they mentioned, showing that people who discount the future more tend to do worse academically. As this figure shows, the more you discount the future, meaning a lower gamma value here, the more days you delay and the less work you actually get done. It's a clear link. Now, back to perfectionism. Remember how they said it's complicated? Their simulations showed it. Sometimes high perfectionism means more procrastination, especially if you discount the future a lot. But in other situations, like when you don't discount the future as much, being a perfectionist might actually make you get started sooner to ensure you get that perfect outcome. This helps explain why studies on perfectionism and procrastination have shown mixed results. It's not a simple one-to-one relationship. This figure illustrates that amazing point. You can see how the same level of perfectionism, represented by theta, can lead to more procrastination in one scenario and less in another, depending on the discount rate. It's all about how you balance the present with the future. The shape of the effort cost is also super interesting. If effort gets much more expensive as you work harder, you're more likely to put things off until the last minute. But if the cost rises slowly, you might spread your work out more evenly. This graph shows that with a concave cost function, meaning effort becomes less costly the more you do, you tend to just do it all at the end. But with a convex cost function where effort gets increasingly expensive, you might spread it out more, or if the cost is too high, you might not work at all. This is a really important insight for understanding how our body and mind feel the strain of work. And of course, the total time available matters. If you have very little time, you might decide it's not worth starting. But if you have a bit more time, you might actually start working. Interestingly, if you have too much time, sometimes you start procrastinating again because you can afford to spread the work out so thinly that it feels less urgent. So, what can we do about procrastination? The paper explores two interventions. The first is immediate rewards. We know that delayed rewards are a big driver of procrastination. So, what happens if we get rewarded sooner? They tested 3 levels of immediacy: low reward upon completion, but before the deadline, medium reward at milestones, and high reward for every bit of progress. And the results were pretty clear. As they increased the immediacy of the reward, the average number of days people delayed work went down. This makes a lot of sense. If you get a little reward for making progress, it's much more motivating than waiting for a big reward way down the line. So, immediate rewards basically reduce procrastination. The more immediate the reward, the less you delay. They also found that people finished tasks earlier and on average got more done. This aligns with our common sense understanding that smaller, more frequent rewards are powerful motivators. The second intervention they looked at was intermediate deadlines. This is like breaking a big project into smaller chunks, each with its own mini deadline. Interestingly, they found that these intermediate deadlines created a pattern where people would ramp up their effort as each deadline approached, not just the final one. And like immediate rewards, intermediate deadlines also reduce procrastination and helped people complete tasks earlier and get more work done. It's like having a series of little nudges keeping you on track. The key here is that these deadlines create proximal outcomes or things that happen soon, which counteracts our tendency to discount the future. So, what's the big takeaway? This study presents a powerful unified theory of procrastination. It suggests that procrastination isn't necessarily a flaw or a sign of weakness, but can actually be a rational outcome of our decision-making process when we weigh immediate costs and benefits against future ones. Their model accounts for many factors we see in the real world, like how much we value the present versus the future, how much we hate unpleasant tasks, and even how perfectionist we are. Unlike simpler models that just look at whether you finished or not, this one looks at the whole timeline of your work, which is much more informative. The study also points out areas where more research is needed. For instance, measuring the actual shape of our effort cost function is tricky. We don't have a simple effort meter yet. They also call for more controlled experiments that specifically measure the time course of work, not just the final outcome. This would help them test their theory even more rigorously. They acknowledge their model makes some simplifying assumptions. For example, it assumes work progress is totally predictable, when in reality it can be a bit random. Also, it doesn't really account for having multiple tasks at once, which is how most of us live. And the model assumes we do complex calculations to be optimal, when in reality we might use simpler shortcuts. They also touch on how things like depression and fear of failure could be incorporated into the model, which is really fascinating for future work. Overall, this research gives us a powerful new framework for understanding why we procrastinate and how we can potentially overcome it. By thinking about work as a dynamic process and understanding how we weigh immediate versus future rewards and costs, we can start to design better strategies for ourselves and for interventions. It frames procrastination not as an irrational failing, but as a consequence of how our minds naturally try to maximize utility, even if that sometimes leads us to delay. It's a really important step forward in understanding this common human behavior. And the great news is the researchers have made their data and code publicly available, so other scientists can build on this work. This complex theory is the product of Peiyuan, Zhang, and Weiji Ma, with Peiyuan Zhang taking the lead on formalizing the theory and conducting the experiments. It's amazing to see how they synthesize so many different ideas into one cohesive model. This research really encourages us to think about our own work habits not as fixed traits, but as a dynamic process that can be understood and hopefully improved. So that's a look at this new normative theory of procrastination. What do you think? Does this model resonate with your own experience? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this analysis helpful, please give this video a like and subscribe to Rubin's Mind Lab for more deep dives into the fascinating world of psychology. We'll see you in the next one.